In this third tutorial on Angular, we are learning how to style your Angular component and understand the different ways of implementing the selectors. Hello everybody, this is Atul from IT Codes. In the last two lectures about Angular, we learned how to create our first Angular application, and in the second lecture, we learned how to create our own component. We didn't do something about styling the component. So in this lecture, we will be doing styling for the component which we created in the last lecture. So let's open the project again. So this was a project we created. We created a menu component, that is our custom component, and we called it inside app component HTML. So let's start the application first. So here is the application running, and this is how we created our last component. I called it twice, so the component is to be called twice. Let's off one calling. Okay, now the component is being called over here. Now, as I said, for styling the component, each and every component is having its own file named as the component.cs. Now let's style this particular ULLI tag which we created. This is we are using the external CSS file which comes with the component itself. So style the UL, I give as margin 0, padding 0, overflow we give it as hidden, we will give a background color. We give a background color a little bit dark. Yes, I will say we take dark olive green and we specify the list style as none. Specify a class for the li tag. Float left. The anchor element inside the li. Say display block. We give a color to it. So the background is dark, so color will be lighter. So we take white. We align the text center. Padding we give 16 pixels. We specify the text decoration, that is none. And we give a class for h over, that is handover. Change the background color to dark green. So we specify normal class for the elements inside our menu.html. We specify the class for the ul and li inside it. Now we go in the menu component, and over here we are having this tag. Now as we save it, you can see the style is implemented onto your component. So this is how we create our style as we create in our normal HTML. In the normal HTML also, we can have an external style sheet. So this is the external style sheet for the component itself, which is created inside the folder of the component. Now there are two ways of implementing the style. This is one which is known as external style sheet. It is defined inside the component TS itself that use this particular style sheet. It says styles URL equals to menu component.component.css. So whatever you define inside your CSS file over here, it will be implemented on the menu component file. So this is pretty easy and straightforward as normal HTML style sheet. Now in normal HTML also we had two ways to implement the style sheet. That is, one is inline style sheet and an external source. So this is an external source. Now if you want to use inline style sheet inside your component, we have to use the tag as, you have to specify an array over here, that is the array will be styles. You specify the styles array. Now inside this square brackets, that is a array bracket, you have to use back tilt symbols, that is this ones, not the single quotes, because we want to give multiple elements over here. So for that you have to use that backtick signs, that is backtick start and backtick stop. Now over here what I am going to do is, we already created a style sheet over here that is already implemented. I want to override this particular lih over. So I copy this entire thing, I paste it over here. So this is an array of style sheet defined inside your TS file. We change the color from dark green to, I give it as black. I just save it, and now you can observe over here that when you roll over it, the color changes to black instead of what we specified inside your external style sheet. So it is pretty straightforward. It works same as your normal HTML used to work. In normal HTML also, when we define an external style sheet and we define it inside the HTML itself in the head section, then it will override the external style sheet. So there are two ways of implementing styles inside your component, that is having and modifying that particular external CSS file and styles array inside the TS file itself. If I remove this styles again, I save it, you are back to the original, the rollover will be green. So this is how you implement your styles inside your component files. Now, as we learned about how to style your component using the CSS way and the inline style sheet, let's learn something more about the selector. The selector which is calling your component. In the selector, it is written as app-menu.component, and for calling we just write it as an element over here. Now this is working in same way as a normal HTML element works. In your normal HTML elements also, what happens is, when we define a class for UL and inside your HTML, when you specify UL, it has been implemented directly as an element. You can see it is working same as inside your component TS. The selector specified is app-menu-component, and we can use it as a element directly. Now in CSS we have implementation in 2-3 ways. You can use it as an attribute, you can also call it as an ID selector, and you can also use it as a class selector. The same thing can be used over here inside your selector app menu component. Now you can see the application is working right now. If we change it as an attribute, I just specify 2 square brackets. So this is same as your CSS implementation of your selector over here. Now it says app component failed. When you observe it, it says app component is not an known element because we change the selector. Now to implement this, we go to the app component HTML, and instead of this, we can specify a simple div, and I use it as an attribute that we used to do in a normal CSS. In normal HTML elements also, we can give attributes over here. Same way, I specify it is an attribute. Now, if you observe, your component works back again. So, this is calling your component as an attribute by specifying it over here in the selector as normal square brackets and attribute component. The another way is calling as in class. So, we just hide this code and I specify selector in the selector. I specify it as a normal class we defined inside your CSS. We used to give dot when you used to create your own custom classes. So, I specify it as app menu component, that is dot app menu component. Now, if you observe, again it goes blank. Why? Because inside your app component, right now it is as an attribute. Now, we again comment this code. We specify another div, and instead of attribute, we specify it as an class over here. Again, your application component works. So, these are two ways of calling the selectors. One as an attribute, second as a normal class, but generally we use the default one. That is simple element calling. So, this makes you understand that you are not just limited how to call your component, but in some cases you can call it by the class or by an attribute. Unfortunately, calling by ID is not supported by your Angular. So, you can either use by attribute, by class, or as by normal element which comes by default, that is just writing it as an element. So, this is the three ways how you can use the selectors. In future, we will be creating another tutorials on Angular. We will be diving into directives, how to use the directives in your Angular application. Thank you.